Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, your bi-weekly video game book club. We play a different game every 2 weeks. We talk about it, talk about all sorts of cool stuff. And joining me, as always, is, in Hinky We Trust himself, Game Doctor Peter Busby.
This is the year, man. Have we lost the game yet?
Checking the score, yes.
Okay, so 81-1. This is the year. 81-1.
Yes, you have. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It's going to be a long year. And joining us, as always, as well, is Billy the Grindfather Rothert. I'm recycling that one because we're going to probably have to talk about your grinding habits in this game.
And it's just a great nickname.
It is a great nickname, I'm going to say. Hello, everyone. My name is Billy Rothert, a.k.a. Rothgar. And if I'm going to be called anything that would sum up my video game personality, just in one nickname, Grindfather fits pretty well, actually.
Yep, you're just going to have to fight Tony Allen for that nickname, and you don't want to bark up that tree.
Tony Allen's a monster.
First team all defense.
First team.
Yeah, so this week we are going to be discussing Child of Light. We did not get any feedback from our last episode on Thomas Was Alone. Once again, if you would like to reach out to the podcast, you can do that. thatpinguino@gmail.com, at thatpinguino on Twitter. You can reach out.
Twitter?
Twitter? What?
Twitter. British Twitter?
Yes.
Yes.
It's Brita. Yes. And you can also reach out to us via the website, deeplistens.libsyn.com. All avenues if you want to reach out to us. So without further ado, let's talk about the fun Ubi art, kind of Ubisoft indie title. It's weird.
Ubisoft Canada, right?
Yeah,
It's Ubisoft Montreal. I was actually in Montreal and walked past Ubisoft Montreal by accident.
By accident?
Yeah, it's not like, you know how some offices of major corporations have statues and stuff that tell you, you're in front of the Blizzard office, there's an orc on a thing. Ubisoft Montreal is just sad.
It's like
it's like a building, probably with no actual words on it, but there's a little info sign that says, if you take left, you go to the Staples outsource for this district of Canada, and then to right, you get to Ubisoft Montreal.
Yes, Les Staples.
Because it has to be in English and French.
Exactly. And then there's, it's Ubisoft, but the T is flickering.
L'affiche. That's the French word for stapler.
I think so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
Thank you for classing this podcast up.
Yeah, I got it.
Immediately off track. So we are talking about Child of Light, a really interesting game. Thanks, Pete, for picking this one. It's been on my list for a while. I've had it in my Steam library and then just haven't found the time to play it. So going in first, did we want to talk about? Why don't we just explain what this game is?
We need to talk about what the plot is about, I guess.
Yeah,
so, this story is set in the 19th century Austria, 19th century Austria,
late 90s,
and 1890s or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's in Austria. The land is ruled by a duke, and he's got this daughter named Aurora. And Aurora falls asleep the night before Easter or Friday. Yeah.
That's Good Friday.
Yeah, on Good Friday. And her skin becomes cold like ice, and everyone thinks that she's dead. Turns out she's not actually dead, but her consciousness or mind has woken up in this other world called Lemuria.
So, question. So that's the setup. You then go to Lemuria and run around doing all sorts of quests and meeting weird animal people and defeating an evil queen. But that initial setup, the promise of you're in Austria, you're in a dukedom, you're a princess, and then it seems like you're dying. That really never gets... it gets paid off, but I thought that the entire thing was going to be, her on her deathbed, imagining this magical kingdom, or some other thing where the fact that you're in Austria has some sort of relevance.
No.
But it's just you're in Austria and then you're not.
Yeah, there's no reason it had to be set in 1890s Austria.
It's just so specific.
Right?
I was like, okay, Aurora, that's... Isn't that...
Sleeping Beauty's name.
Okay, Sleeping Beauty's name. Is that also the princess from, oh, what was that sort of Russian? It's another princess movie, but I don't
I think
think.
the Fantasia.
Not Anastasia.
Oh,
Oh,
Anastasia. That's
that's it.
okay. That's it. Aurora. But I, I'm like, okay, is this a historical princess? Like, do I have to look at a history book to see who this is supposed to be? Is it going to be relevant? This Duke, like, is this a reimagining of some sort of historical moment? No. No, it's just a really specific setup for a very kind of generic story.
Yeah.
Like,
I did. Did you guys look up Lemuria though? I did look up that.
no.
No, inform
It's
us.
yeah, it's sort of like a fabled Atlantean sort of thing. So they found that lemurs were on two different continents. There was sort of no reason to explain it. So they're like, oh, there must have been a land bridge here, and it collapsed into the sea, into the Pacific or the Indian Ocean.
They
But
called it Lemuria.
yeah, Lemuria. But then plate tectonics came along, and they were like, no, that's not how this works.
Okay.
So nobody believes it anymore. So again,
Oh.
like a very specific name for a land that's really just an imaginary.
So it's not. So it's through Lemuria's through mirrors, like magic mirrors.
Yeah.
So the part where it's like a lost continent or something doesn't even tie in.
No.
Great. Because like the whole time I'm like, okay, so we're in Lemuria, and when you get to Lemuria, like there's this woman, there's a dark queen, and
Umbra.
in the setup, Umbra, yep. There's a setup, and like Aurora's mom is like this white,
Aurora's actual mom, like birth mother,
yeah,
is this angelic, white lady, but his father, sorry, her father remarries this other lady, Umbra,
who has evil stepdaughters, and
Yeah.
she's got black hair, which lets you know
She's
that she's
evil.
mean.
she's evil.
And her name's Latin for shadow.
Yeah.
Yep.
hmm
And it's just like, I'm like, okay, so she's dying, and all of this is a metaphor. Like the evil queen's a metaphor for her evil stepmom. This heavenly figure is a metaphor for her mom. No, it's not a metaphor. It's all literal.
It's actually happening.
It's all 100% literal.
There are no layers to this.
So what is your goal in this game? So we're talking about Aurora and her family, but when you get dropped in and you first assume control of your character, you're given these points like, all right, I'm in Lemuria, and Aurora originally thinks, oh, I'm dreaming. This is all just a dream. It's a fairy tale. She meets characters and realizes through time, this is actually not a dream. This is really happening.
I'm here.
So I'm actually here. This is for real, or as real as it can be while you're actually on your deathbed somewhere else, right?
Is
So-
she? Because it seems like she was on her deathbed, and then she was whisked away by fireflies to Lemuria.
I mean, okay, we could talk about what actually happened later. But
Okay,
we're,
I'm just
we're
I'm
getting
just
the
making
intro
sure.
stuff now.
I'm just making sure. I saw the fireflies pick her up.
Oh, okay, all right, fine. So
These
what
deep
is
listens. We're getting deep in this.
Aurora is told what she has to do. Evil Queen Umbra has stolen the sun, the moon, and the stars from Lemuria. It's Aurora's job to go find them, collect them, bring them back, or restore whatever light power they provide to the land. So she gets the first one, the star, like immediately. I think it's the star, right? She gets the star one like very first level.
Is that what lets her fly?
That's what lets her fly, right? And so she's got to find sun and moon is like the actual two parts of the game, right? You get star after tutorial level, and then it says, all right, great, now go find sun and moon. You go on these two deep branches of storytelling. Or sorry, it's like they're not really distinct, but there's
it's linear.
it's
eventually
linear,
get
but
to-
you definitely just do one and then you do the other, and they're kind of separate.
Yeah,
They're
you do the moon,
punctuated a
then the
little
sun.
bit. They're punctuated by stronger story points, but it's basically just one line of story. So that's what you're doing. You are this kid, you can fly, you gain party members, and you fight in RPG style combat until you defeat the bosses that give you the sun and the moon.
and then everyone lives happily ever after.
Basically.
Pretty much. Well, Austria's destroyed, but beyond that,
No, it's fine. It's the story of the Five Hills, man. We're good.
yeah,
It's fine. They end up. The people get evacuated to Lemuria, and they live happy lives. It's all good.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah,
So
so
let's get into it. What are we actually talking about here?
yeah, so I mean, I think that metaphor thing was a pretty big point for me. Was I was thinking that there were layers that were not there, but also just kind of how the story flows. At first, it seems like it's going to be full of MacGuffins. Like you're going to go to this place, find this thing, and then move on to this other place, find this other thing. But it turns out, I would say the game kind of has two major halves. The first half is you exploring Lemuria and meeting all of the different peoples that live there. And then the second half is MacGuffin time. It is time to get the sun, the moon, and the sun. And at
When you
that
say
point,
MacGuffin, what are you referring to? Is that like a gamer term that I missed?
no, Pete, want to explain what a MacGuffin is?
Sure. So the easiest way, and Gina, correct me if I get this wrong. I always think of it as sort of in an anime context, right? Like sort of, if you think of One Piece as the primary example, it's this thing that everybody's searching for, right? And typically it's used as a way to prolong the story, right? It's something everybody's looking for, but they never actually get to. In gaming sense, they sort of get to it. It's an ultimate goal, the thing you need to find.
Yeah, a MacGuffin is some object usually that by acquiring it through whatever means you have to get it. Once you get it, your problems are solved.
Yeah.
So in some cases that will be a power weapon. In some cases that will be a person you need to find. But it's some object that will give you supreme power or give you the solution to your problems. And MacGuffins take a lot of forms. They're very useful in storytelling. They propel stories forward. They give you a sense of momentum. But a lot of the times they're interchangeable. Like the sun and the moon could be anything. It's just important that you need them.
All right,
And
so like where did that word come from? Like what's the etymology of MacGuffin?
it's from the Latin,
It
MacGuffius.
gotta be, right?
No, I think it's from a story. But I can
I
look this
actually
up.
lost interest. No, fuck this. All right, let's just get to the actual gameplay.
Yeah, so this first part of the game is you looking for the sun and the moon, but you're actually kind of encountering all these different societies within Lemuria. And then the second part of the game is two big dungeons where you're trying to get the sun and the moon. And I found the first half of the game a lot more compelling, honestly, than the second half. But what did you guys think? Do you think that's a fair synopsis?
Yeah,
I
and I think there's just
I
some,
found it was equally compelling.
really.
Yeah.
I think there's just something inherently enjoyable about getting party members, honestly. Like in terms of like the loot you could potentially find in any RPG, I think party members are the most satisfying to find. And you also
Agreed.
get you also get that added bonus of sort of the different, like you said, societies you encounter.
Yeah, I like the Bumpus Populi. They were
Yeah,
my favorite.
the mouse people.
Yep, I like the capitalist mice.
Yeah. They were straight down to business.
I I honestly, when I was meeting the different civilizations, so there's the Populi, the Katagita, the Aristoli, the Caterpilli, and then there's fish people. I forget what the fish people are called.
And there's fish people.
There's only two fish people left, so
Yeah.
fish person.
Like to sum this up, you basically have like a gnome, like a gnome or dwarf. He's a wizard.
He's got an
You've,
accent like dwarves do.
you've got Aurora, who's your main character. We should have put her first, right?
She's a people.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's a
a
people.
red-haired girl.
So you get the dwarf gnome guy. You get two acrobats
Yeah.
throughout some point of the game. They're like circus folk acrobats.
Fuck.
They are circus folk.
They are. Yeah, it's
You
true.
get a mouse. You get. I'm trying to think. I'm counting on my
It's a
hands here.
golem.
You get. Oh right.
Where the wild things are joins
Yeah,
you.
you get the
Yeah.
big where Agnes or whatever his name is. Angus. It's Angus. It's just spelled really weird, but it's the same like origin of the name Angus.
Oh, okay.
Fish person.
Fish person,
Again.
and is that it?
Um,
No, we get
you get your sister for like half a second.
you get your sister for a while, but then you get the
man.
person who does like brick wall. Who's that?
That is the second jester.
Uh,
That's the second jester. There's the brother and the sister.
Yeah, one's blue, one's red.
Tumble and Tumble.
we're missing one then.
TJ Tumbles. Are we
Barnum,
missing one?
Gotta be.
There's Magic Dude. There's
The Rock
Rat Guy. There's two jesters. There's the giant Where the Wild Things Are guy. There's Fish Person, and there's
Oh yeah, I was forgetting Angus. I didn't count him on my fingers.
That's the key. You gotta count
Yeah.
on the fingers.
It wasn't counted on my fingers, so I forgot him.
yeah. So I enjoyed how each of your party members represented a different kind of society within this world, and also how distinct they are in terms of personality. Like each character is pretty much paper thin, but they at least have different affectations and different. They usually have like one personality trait, but it's super duper pronounced. And I thought that it was interesting that in terms of real world influence, it seemed like each of these different fictional civilizations kind of was inspired by a different actual real world society. Like the Katagita, the Where the Wild Things Are guy, kind of looked like his face looked like a painted Japanese mask. His armor looked almost like samurai armor. Like some of the other warriors had like spears and stuff. And Katagita is, whatever his name, yeah, Katagita is a word you could actually spell in Japanese. Whereas a lot of the other names you couldn't really. The Caterpillar seemed like the kind of dwarf, which I guess would be Ireland and Scotland, or one of those two nations inspired the same way. The Aristali I couldn't really put a finger on, but I would guess Eastern Europe. That's the jesters.
Yeah, I would have said like Imperial French court or something, but
Yeah, and then the
Now we're
Bumpus
just
Populi.
splitting hairs.
yeah, no,
Yeah, and the Bumpus Populi seemed American or English.
Mouse people.
Mouse people that want to get theirs.
you gotta get yours.
I mean, you want to talk about the grind? They're all about the grind for real.
Yeah, he is just, look, Margaret, I need to get that Skrilla or Margaret's not gonna date me. So what was your favorite location of the places you end up going to? Because I thought that the Bumpus Populi's place, like the giant.
Well, yeah,
cool.
okay. The giant was really cool. No, okay. Are we talking about like what's our favorite town that we visited, or what's our favorite like location to travel through the game?
I'm gonna say location, like
Alright,
because
'cause-
this game's visually very striking.
It is. So I think one of my favorite levels to travel around was the area where you found Tristis. It was like the flying islands where there was wind blowing and stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
That
the
was one of my
I think
favorites.
it's called like the floating temple or something. But yeah.
It's wherever the giant takes you when you ride him up to like the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really cool one.
Yeah, I thought so.
I still
The best place for grinding was that little area east of the of the giant guy, like between the gnome town and the mountain guy. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Best place for grinding stones, especially rubies.
Gotta get those rubies.
Got to get those rubies. There are not enough rubies.
You guys had a shortage of rubies?
I had a shortage of rubies, but that's fine.
Can we talk about drop charts?
We're not gonna. We are never.
I have spreadsheets, Excel docs, the whole thing. Like,
Never going to talk about drop charts. Never.
can we
Maybe?
talk about
Never.
how the sonnets weren't properly in iambic pentameter?
I mean, we can. Did you want to talk about
thought
a
they were just
location that you liked
couplets.
first?
Like,
I did. The giant. The giant.
You like
was
the giant?
there.
I like going inside the giant's chest and then seeing all the giant bones.
Yeah.
Like it's a giant stone giant, but it still has rib cages.
The heart of a man.
Yeah, when I saw the stone uvula, that was what did it for me. I'm like, that's attention to detail.
And yet they couldn't get iambic pentameter right. Did the poetry start to grate? It started to annoy me.
it didn't annoy me at all, really.
At a point, I pretended it wasn't. iambic pentameter. I pretended it wasn't couplets.
Yeah.
I just tried to read them as, like, you know how when you don't read poetry out loud, sometimes the rhyme and the meter does not really ring in your head?
Mhm.
I never read it out loud. I tried intentionally to try and beat that out of it, especially because some of the rhymes are really forced.
Yeah, and the meter's off. The part that bothered me though, well, because you can avoid it when you're reading it out loud, but when they read it out loud, they didn't read through line breaks like you're supposed to. They would stop at the end of line breaks, then start reading again at the next line, even when it wasn't punctuated to do so.
Does it upset you deeply?
Yeah, as a literary scholar, it did.
these assholes.
Fucking
Don't they know?
Degenerates.
You just put a comma. That's all you have to do.
enjambment, damn it, enjambment.
You put a fucking comma. It's poetry.
That's
It's so simple.
Now,
They
Pete,
said it.
isn't there like a
8th
specific
century Austria.
term where the way the verse is presented to you, like on screen or on paper, contributes to how it should be read? Isn't there like a vocab word for that?
Enjambment.
Oh,
Enjambment's where, well, enjambment's the word where it like goes through the end of the line to the next line. I think.
I thought there was some other. You know, maybe you're right. I'm gonna defer to you on this,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling that that it's either that or another vocab word that means or that is referring directly to how the lines are like ordered on the page. Like you can have a line break and start a new line of, like, if two characters are talking in the same
Yeah.
in the same verse. In order to separate the characters, you'll have like one of them start the line, the other one ends the line, but it's on two lines of dialogue. But the second one starts in the middle of the page. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing was just it seemed like a lot of effort
for
to
not
present lines of dialogue that didn't have a lot of weight sometimes. Like, every time you get a new character after a few battles, the next several battles will just be that character interacting with all your existing party members, kind of
I
having
liked
their
that.
characterization moments. I
That
thought it
was
was nice.
cool.
It was a cool way to develop the characters kind of naturally in a game where there aren't huge breakpoints other than like one or two cutscenes. It like you're not going about a town talking to people, so they kind of gave you that experience. And since they couldn't control when you were going to see particular battles, they just kind of had a counter after every battle that said, okay, now you're going to talk to this person, now you're going to talk to this person. But the conversations themselves were so light and simple, it seemed like, why are you going to the trouble of making all this rhyme?
All right. Well, I think you would have. All right. So I read an article you wrote, Gino, about Final Fantasy. Yeah,
Ooh,
crazy, right? Who
hey.
reads his shit? It was about
Someone
Final
read my
Fantasy
stuff.
VII.
Hooray.
It was about Final Fantasy VII and how you pick up party members, right? And how it doesn't make sense that some party members can be added to your party basically at any time of the game.
Yes.
And you specifically mentioned Yuffie, right? Because you
Yes.
can get her from like 20% into the game or like 90% into the game. It doesn't matter.
And she is down, regardless of what time you get her. She's going to go fight the final boss. She doesn't care.
That could be the last thing you do before you go fight Sephiroth.
Oh, hi, I'm Yuffie. I'm going to join your party. What, we're going to the center of the earth to fight some sort of god demon? Sure.
Let's roll. By the way, what are you guys' names again?
What are your names?
What I'm
Face.
Okay, so
That's a
what
weird
I'm
name.
getting at is in some games like that, and I'm not just talking about Final Fantasy, but any RPG of that generation, you get all these party members, and sometimes if you don't have the specific like character interactions, if you don't talk to someone in a specific town at some point of the game, you might just miss dialogue completely between some characters, right? It's entirely possible for two of your party member characters to never have an interaction outside of a combat sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the way that they did it solved that well, it doesn't solve it completely, because if you avoid it towards the end of the game, I actually played on casual difficulty, because this game has two difficulties, expert and casual, which seems like there's a middle ground there. That maybe,
I played on expert.
Yeah,
I played on casual.
that just means people have more life. But the difference between casual and expert, it just meant that at a certain point I was just so overpowered that I just felt like I should be avoiding these battles. I don't need them. And when I realized that what was triggering the dialogue was fighting battles and then getting to the end of the battle, I intentionally ran into fights that I would not have otherwise
To get the dialogue options.
to get the dialogue to happen. So I think it was a good solution, but if you were someone who was, not necessarily looking for the fights for experience or for items, it could lead to you missing some stuff. But, it's a low percentage chance, I think.
Yeah. Do you think they could have done sort of the Thomas was alone route and just sort of overlay it over as you're sort of navigating through the environment? Or do you think the randomness of the potential encounters precludes that as a solution?
I think you can do a story overlay the way Thomas Was Alone did, like on chapters or something.
They
'Cause
did
there
that a little
definitely
bit
were.
between cities. They would have little bits of banter between like Igniculus and Aurora,
Yeah.
and they could have just subbed in another character instead. True that they didn't, but I don't think like they missed out on an opportunity because they had another mechanic that would do
Yeah.
basically the same thing.
I mean, Aniculus was sort of I would say, if you took, it's Navi, right? From, what's her name?
Zelda.
Yeah, that's it, right? Navi? If you took her and like maybe if you made her as useful as possible, that's where you get Aniculus. Like, this is what that person should be.
A tiny firefly that...
Like a useful firefly.
Yeah, a useful firefly. But Igniculus doesn't really say anything that's super impactful. Igniculus is a useful mechanical tool more than he is a character for a lot of it. But that's fine. I mean, that's more than Navi ever was, right? Navi was just an annoyance with wings.
True. So I actually want to talk a little bit about Igniculus in particular, but I think we should talk about the combat sequence first because I feel like it'd be out of place or out of order to talk about Igniculus before combat. So do you want to give a little summary of what our combat situation is like, Gino?
Sure. It is a turn-based combat system, RPG style. If you played, I've been told it's like Grandia. That is where the time bar started, but I know it most recently from Penny Arcade Adventures Episode 3 and Episode 4. So the ones that were done by the people who made Breath of Death 7 or 8, and then Cthulhu Saves the World. And so the way the combat works is every character starts on a timeline, and time advances in real time, and at a certain point near the end of the bar, you enter your commands, and from that point to the end of the bar, you can be interrupted if someone hits you.
That's
while
like
you're
your
in
casting animation.
Yeah, while you're in that casting animation. And every attack has a different delay where you'll be in a casting state and in a vulnerable state.
Right, like if you're casting a big spell, it will take your time will move at like 25% its normal rate to get to the end of the bar. Or if you're doing something that's particularly fast, it can move at 1.5 times your normal speed. So you'll get to the end really quickly.
Yeah, and so the trick of this system is to make sure that when you're casting, you are casting short things so you don't get interrupted. If you see an opponent about to act, you want to hit your opponents when they are in that bar so you interrupt them and knock them back on the time meter so they have to re-enter stuff, and you can kind of delay your opponent from ever acting if you are especially good about juggling people on the time meter.
Right. I got to a point in the game where if I was facing one opponent, they would never get to act again.
Yeah, I did too. It's not like... I thought that it was pretty interesting in terms of combat, if we're going to talk about it, that there's kind of two layers going on to the combat. There's kind of an elemental, or I guess three. There's an elemental system that's going on where enemies have elemental strengths and elemental resistances, and different elements are strong against different enemy types. Usually it's pretty clear-cut, like if something's on fire, maybe use water on it. If something's wet, maybe shoot it with electricity. And then there's like, if something's made of wood, light it on fire. And that holds true for almost the entire game. There's also a physical versus magical damage some enemies have magical resistance, some have physical. So against some enemies, you want to do elemental damage physical or elemental damage magic. But it really depends on what type of enemy you're facing. And then you have characters that manipulate the bar, manipulate the time bar itself. And I found those characters to be by far the most fun to me. Like, there are some characters that are just physical beaters. There are some that are magical beaters. And then there's some characters who just screw around with time in weird, fun ways.
Right. I mean, we have that sort of like in Final Fantasy games. You'll have like a time mage character.
Usually it'll be like one spell, though, like haste or slow, and it won't work on 90% of the enemies you actually want it to work on. In this game, everyone plays by the time bar rules.
Right. So, there were a couple characters, actually more than one character that could manipulate time. Some of them manipulated how the other enemies like moved on their timelines. They could like cast like mass slow spells. Some people made all of your allies start their new cycle like further up on the timeline than they did before. Some people can just cast like stop spells and they just stop moving. Some people their attacks have like a passive chance to knock people back in time. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of time bar interaction. It's really important. One of the most prevalent time bar interactions is Igniculus.
Yep. Want to tell people what Igniculus can do? Because he's dope.
Yeah, so Igniculus is this sort of Navi fairy character that just floats around with you for the duration of the game. Igniculus has inside combat mechanics and outside combat mechanics. Outside of combat, Igniculus is quite literally like a light that you can shine on areas of the game. It can collect items for you that only Igniculus can collect by moving him basically like a cursor across your screen, and because like it's hard to say. Igniculus can path through.
Let's call him Iggy.
Fine. Iggy can path through any obstacle that you can see. So Iggy can just kind of go through walls and stuff. And sometimes you'll find special chests that only Iggy can open. Igniculus, a.k.a. Iggy, can also play a vital
AKA
role.
Young Money, a.k.a. the light in the darkness.
Right. He plays a vital role in combat. So Igniculus in combat is still there as a cursor, and he can basically highlight and do some small actions over your allies and your enemies. So here's how it works. When Igniculus is shining his light on the enemies, they move slower on the timeline, which can either sync up enemies that you might want to hit together with like a multi-target hit spell, or desynchronize enemies that you don't want to get hit by their spells back to back. It can also just make one problem enemy just way slower so that you have to deal with their shit less overall throughout the whole fight. There's sometimes I've just had Iggy just spotlight one guy because I'm like, all right, shit, I don't want him to ever cast a spell if he's not absolutely having to go next immediately. So like you slow down your biggest threat so you have the most time to deal with it before it becomes a threat again. Alternatively, if you hover him over your allies and you shine your spotlight on them, it heals them. So it's got two different purposes, two different uses. So,
and it's interesting to note that in combat, so throughout the game there are wish bushes.
Yeah, they're like bushels of wishes. Yeah.
That's the story reason for what they are. But they're bushes full of health and like useful stuff, and those bushes actually exist within the combat system.
Yeah,
like
in
when
and
you're
out
on
of
a combat screen. So you control Igniculus with one of the thumbsticks, and he continues to be controllable with that thumbstick in combat. And so when you float him around, you can float him into these bushes, and it can give you healing within battles, and that is how you recharge him. So he can't just slow indefinitely, and so it kind of creates this...
He does burn a little meter when he does it.
Yeah, exactly. And it also, that Iggy can be controlled by a second player. It's actually a two-player mode.
Right, you could have it be a second player.
Which is a cool thing.
So here's something that's interesting about him.
Co-op touches besides that?
What?
That's the co-op option. They just control Iggy.
Fair enough.
Iggy's new album, See Firefly.
So the thing that makes him stand out to me is that, yeah, we have this sort of... it actually sort of hybrids the two combat systems, like true real time and the sort of hybrid active wait combat system.
Hmm.
When we say active wait, we're talking about those like modes in Final Fantasy where you're either true real time and you can't stop the clock for anything, or you wait for every person to make a move, like really like hard turn-based combat.
Hmm.
So the actual combat minus Igniculus is this hybrid active wait system where it's real time, then somebody has to make a decision, and then it goes back to the real time system. But
Yeah.
Igniculus is always active.
Hmm. And even when the game is paused, you can move into Igniculus. Like
Yes.
it is.
You could
It's
actually
honestly
exploit that a little bit.
a little bit. I exploited it all the time.
Like you needed to instantly move because actually Igniculus doesn't move that fast across the screen, so you could have you could like mess up because you don't have him positioned over one character, and then you need him to get to the other character really fast, and so you can like pause the game, move Igniculus, and he'll be in the right position when you unpause to go back into real time.
Yeah, I had the game on highest speed, so at a certain point, I literally couldn't move if the bar was moving, if characters were moving on the time bar, instead of it being paused for me to enter a command, I couldn't move him fast enough to really impact anything. So I basically was setting him up in between turns and abilities and stuff.
I changed my game speed as needed, which is something that I actually have only done, I think, in like one other game. I can't remember, but I think I've done it before. Usually I'll just pick whatever I like and stick with it for the entire game, but changing your game speeds here made my life a lot easier in this game because in combat where it mattered, I like things to be a little bit slower so I could do the mental math in my head like who's going to actually win the race between these two characters. I know that if they're in this spot on the bar and I'm trying to cast a big spell, are they actually going to catch up to me and interrupt me, or are they not? And if they're moving a little bit slower, I have more like ticks to sort of do the mental math and extrapolate that uniform motion problem in my head.
So, question:
Answer: hands on buzzers.
since you played in two different, if you played around with the speeds, um, is there a difference in how long people are paralyzed depending on how much speed, game speed you have? Because I notice there are some characters that have paralysis abilities
Yes.
that will literally just freeze someone on the timeline for a certain amount of time, and it said in the ability description that it would freeze them for 6 seconds, and I don't know if that is 6 game seconds or 6 real world seconds. Because if it's game seconds and I dial the game speed way up, it should be the same all the time. Like,
You mean like you could actively make stop abilities better by turning up the game speed, or
I'm
worse by
asking.
turning them down?
I'm asking.
I don't
Did you
remember.
notice
I
if that
didn't notice
happened?
it. If I'm going to be honest, I really didn't notice. But then again, I didn't deal with stop mechanics that much.
Yeah, you get the character who has paralysis so late in the game, which is just
Well,
such a
other characters do it to you,
yeah,
but I
but it
would
doesn't come up that
usually,
frequently.
I would usually like immediately swap out a character and like do the like cure status ailment thing on them because another thing was there's basically zero penalty for swapping out characters in this game. Like
Yeah.
you can do it basically instantly, and they don't have to wait. They just act next,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool. It actually encouraged me, and I'm sure it encouraged other players to try more character combinations, do more, basically combos. Even though it's hard to combo with only two active characters at any given time.
Yeah, it's mostly just trying to keep the two characters who are most useful at any given moment. Like, if you're in an area where there's a lot of enemies that are vulnerable to physical attacks, you probably keep your two physical attackers in your main slot. And then if it turns out that there's one enemy in this group that is invulnerable to physical attacks, you just need to swap instead of beating your head against a wall.
Right, right. Now this brings up like my first problem with the game. I wish we could have had three characters on the front line. I think there being two characters. Sorry, I'm approaching this the wrong way. In every combat sequence, there's a maximum of two people on your team and a maximum of three people on the opponent's team. You're never going to have more or less people on the screen. There's always going to be two on your side and three on the other side, provided there's not some like part of the story where you only have one character, like in the very beginning, if it's just you, Aurora, and no one else, or some party members have to leave for some reason. I don't like this. I think that if we're gonna have a 7 party member lineup, let me have 3 out at once, because that just exponentially increases the combat synergy that's available to me. I mean, if they want to make it a little harder and have it be a one side, or like have us be outnumbered, let us have 5 enemies on the other side. That would have been more fun too, because I like to just kill more shit in a fight instead of, oh great, fight 3 of the same bad guy and they all die to the same spell. All right, just wait 3 turns and then the round is over. I'd rather there have been the option of having 4 or 5 bad guys across from me, so that they could have different combinations as well. I think it would have been cool to have like 1 big bad guy and like 2 of one kind and 2 of another kind. It would have made the fight way more dynamic. More annoying, I guess, but
why not just run that argument out then? I mean, if you have 3, I'd be annoyed. Why not have 4? 5, 4, I'd be annoyed. Why not have 5?
I think for me, 3 seems like a sweet spot, just because so many of the abilities. So there are characters that have buffs and stuff that target one or all of your party members. And when you only have 2 characters, the character that is paired up with that party member, so your all cast abilities will always hit just the character who has that ability and one other character. So really, it's a buff to one other person.
Like, if it actually did it to all the party members, that would be way better.
That would be way better and way
And then
more
swap
useful.
out the guy, like swap people outside who got buffed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, when these all abilities only actually hit the 2 that are in the battle at a given time,
So it's
and
not
so
really
I almost
all.
never
It's really
use
just
them.
+1.
Yeah, and so that +1 character had to be the one who was this. A lot of characters who have buffs are not themselves super dynamic characters. Usually, they're characters who are more supporting in nature. Maybe they'll have haste moves, but they don't deal a ton of damage, or they'll have very specific strengths. So the person who you want to buff is the one who's the heavy hitter. It's the character who's going to get the most out of this particular type of buff, be it damage or be it speed. Usually it's some sort of damage dealer. And so
I use it backwards, though. I would actually buff Angus a ton and make him an indestructible, like, god.
Yeah, but he hits Howard.
He does hit hard, but I used him as a defense character. He taunted, and then I kept having him like heal himself, so he would just soak up all the damage. Basically, it took me 2 turns to grant Angus like 5 or 6 turns of basically invulnerability, and then I could have Angus and whoever I wanted out, and the other person would never get touched, so they could do all the risky shit, all the big stuff, and Angus would just sit there and take damage. I would have him just like defend half the turns too.
But that again is another example of where it would have been more dynamic if you had another character. Cause
right,
really
I wish I could have had 2.
You have one character who's not doing anything; they're just eating damage, and then you have another character who is doing all of the work.
Characters, I meant to say 2 non-Angus characters.
Yeah, so I just the restrictions of having 2 characters in this game is so much more pronounced than it would be, I think, if they just changed up how some of the properties of the abilities worked. Like, if haste worked on everyone, I would have used that way more often.
If, like, unblockable or unstoppable worked on everyone. If starting 4 on the timeline worked on everyone. If,
Yeah, it made buffs really less useful just because in some battles you really want to cycle people. And as soon as you cycle, that means the buff's gone.
Yeah.
So buffing just was like, well, am I going to haste this person? If I'm hasting this person, that means I'm intrinsically deciding that this character is going to be useful for the next
3 or 5 turns.
Minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3-5 turns, and are they going to be out of MP? What happens if I kill this one enemy type, and then they just become useless because the thing that they were supposed to kill is dead? And so it's weirdly restrictive. Such a small decision, but it is. And especially, you guys didn't play. I think, Billy, you actually saw me play the Penny Arcade Adventure games.
Yeah, I watched you play some of them.
They use almost the exact same timing system. And it's cool to see these 2 games approach this kind of time bar system in such different ways, because they both exploit the idea of characters being on a time bar, but they approach it with... So in Child of Light, there's a lot of pausing people on the time bar and accelerating you on the time bar, so you start earlier or you move things back on the bar. A lot of the stuff that directly interacts with that system is about freezing, moving back or moving forward, or increasing your pace or slowing your pace. In the Penny Arcade adventure games, it's a lot more about juggling things on the time bar. It's about setting up moves that happen 2 to 3 turns later. So like there are character classes that set up abilities that will take like 3 turns to charge. Like your character is allowed to move around and do stuff while that's happening, but there's a character called, I think it was like the Apocalypto or something, who's a doomsayer. And so that character's...
Make like predictions?
Yeah, the character's power was it makes doom predictions. And it takes like 3 or 4 turns for those doom predictions to come to pass. But when they do come to pass, they hit hard. And so your Apocalypto person could say like, there's going to be frogs.
Or like
and
bad
lightning.
breath.
And fire.
It's gonna be frogs.
And when that comes to pass, all of those plagues hit all at once. And so you're kind of stacking and you're betting that your characters are going to be alive for when that doom moment actually comes to pass. And like there are characters that have passives that kind of become a separate thing moving on the bar. And so you can kind of create these static effects that are happening over and over and over again. Whereas Child of Light, it's all about just manipulating people on the bar. And honestly, there's nothing quite as devastating in Penny Arcade as Gen at the end of the game in Child of Light. Because you can just freeze someone on the bar and they just don't get to move. Like it's just paralyze you, move you back on the bar, haste my own people, paralyze you again. You're just not even attacking. The final boss
couldn't put
like
any
twice.
damage in.
It doesn't matter if they can't attack.
I don't want to play the same battle or play in the same fight for like 19 turns. I'd rather just
Billy, you love
roll the
grinding.
dice.
That's
Yeah,
just
hold on.
grind.
Let's just get something straight. You haven't grinded until the battle's over. So you want to get the battle over quickly.
So it's all about just speed of returns.
Like yeah, like if like how much work am I putting in? I want to get maximum returns as quickly as possible. That's why I manipulated the game speed. When I was hunting down and trying to find extra gems and stones for my crafting delight, I would put on max game speed, and that's what you had to do because sometimes you got to get through 118 random encounters in the next 30 minutes so you can get your rubies on.
Gotta find my rubies, gonna hold them tight. Gotta grab my crafting delight.
Yeah, that's what I did. I got a princess gem.
Flawless.
Thank you.
Do you know how many stones it actually takes to make a princess gem?
Let's talk about crafting after the break.
Oh, boy, I can't wait.
Let's talk about crafting. And Pete, you wanted to talk about, what was the phrase?
Buildings romans, Gino.
Buildings romans. So after the break, we've got gems and buildings and Romans. In a bit. And we're back. So, Billy, when we left, you were talking about gems.
Why'd you remind him? Like, we could have gotten away with this one.
That's true.
There was no escape. There was no escape from this. All right. Crafting system.
I sang a crappy version of Afternoon Delight. No one can forget that. Everyone who's listening, you can't unhear it. You made this decision.
All right, so I am the grind father. I accept it.
Please put that on your business card someday.
I like grinding characters. I like getting collectibles.
You like grinding up on them.
That's it. Like people.
Did you guys complete their skill trees? I did.
No, no.
My characters are like level 85 at the end of the game.
You are grinding like an 8th grader at prom.
Didn't have to because
once you get goes to prom.
Once you get your princess gem,
I guess a dance.
You get like plus 40% experience.
So wait,
So
wait.
it's
Explain to
way
me the
quick.
princess gem again. Wait.
All right, so here's the deal.
How many rocks does it take? You never
Oh
told me.
yeah, okay. So
How many
you've
rocks
got
does it take to get to the center?
the
Tell us how to get our
entire
rocks off, Billy.
crafting system revolves around 3 gems. Okay, a ruby, a sapphire, and an emerald.
And 4 bracelets.
Gem and the holograms.
3
Jokes
gems, 4
aside,
bracelets. Yes.
you combine any of those two, it makes a new basic one, which is tourmaline, citrine, and amethyst.
Amethyst.
So you've got like 6 basics. 3 basics makes a like level 2. 3 level 2s make a level 3. 3 level 3s make a level 4.
How many level 4s make a level 5?
That is not really applicable because level 5 is the princess gem. So anyway, it works like this. There are basically 6 colors of gems. You've got red, blue, green for the ruby, sapphire, emerald, and light blue, purple, orange, basically for the off-brand stuff.
Yes. Turquoise, purple, and orange.
And those are like the 6 basic colors. There's technically 2 others, diamond and onyx. So maybe you have 8, right? Because if you because if you mix together a ruby, emerald, and sapphire, you get a diamond. You mix the other 3, you get an onyx, and there's these levels of all of them. So basically, it comes down to what color the stone is.
But Billy, what if you mix diamonds with onyxes?
Then you get
Spinels.
a spinel, and if you just combine these things all together, you will eventually get one brilliant looking princess gem.
So sell me on this pyramid scheme.
All right. If you want to get yourself a princess stone, you need to collect a grand total of
to get stones.
All right, here's guys, the numbers.
The number people came here for.
486.
That's not the real number. That can't possibly be how many gems you found.
You need to get 400. Oh, I found more than that. You need to get 486 gems for a princess stone. And that's if you get equal amounts of every single one, so you don't have any extras lying around.
That's not how that works. That's not how this game works. There's no extras lying around. It is nothing but extras. I have sapphires for days. I've got no rubies.
What do you
Sapphires for days.
What do you get for this? Okay, each character.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
What do you get for
each
this?
character in your party? Yeah, it's happiness first.
It's not happiness.
Each character in your party can hold up to 3 of these stones. Okay, you can hold one in your offense slot, your defense slot, and your like accessory slot.
So what do you do with
Right?
the other 485?
No, you
Combine
combine all
Ah.
486 to make one princess stone. That's how many it takes to get a princess stone.
Okay, Billy, tell me what in the 3 slots, because these stones have different abilities depending on what slot you slot them into.
Right.
What are the abilities of the princess stone? I'm sure that it's so much more powerful than all the other stones that you would be a fool not to get it.
All right. So I guess you asked me like the last question first, but
Okay.
what is it like? Just a very brief, not going to take more than like 10 or 15 seconds. What do the other stones do? They'll grant you a variety of things like element attack on your weapons, element defense on your armor. Maybe you'll get like more health or more MP, or you'll move a little bit faster on the timeline, or they give you random, not random, but
Passive chance to knock people back on the timeline.
A variety of buffs.
To paralyze.
Yeah, some of them are your spell damage is increased, or you take less spell damage, or you get different berserk abilities. Like if you're below 30% HP, you trigger some buff. Like you'll get, unstoppable spell. Like you'll get like super armor, so you can't be knocked back when you're casting a spell or when you're doing an attack. Whatever. They give you different buffs. The Princess Stone, if you put it in your attack slot, all attack damage plus 40%.
That's so many percents.
It is.
That's like almost half percent.
In your armor slot, all damage reduced by 25%.
Dang.
Yeah. If it's in the accessory slot, all spell power, which is just everything that's not regular attack power, increased by 35%.
Wait a second. You told me that it increased your experience gain.
No, that's the diamond.
Okay, thank goodness. Because if it was after 400 something stones, you then got the ability to get slightly more experience points, so you can grind even more. That seemed like the worst.
No, that's if you get the like highest level diamond. You
I'm
get
all about the high level diamond.
Yeah, you get 20% experience.
How many stones does that one take?
Oh, not that much at all. Only like, let me look over my math here. I can't think, but 3 to the power of like 4 or something like that is 81.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
This isn't a math podcast, but it checks out.
Yeah, that works. You got to get one of each, and then you got to go through 4 levels, so 81.
So you got the princess gem.
Well,
Really?
I actually had the highest level of every stone, so I could have made 2 princess gems.
You have a sickness.
The cure is more
Like
gems.
a moment of silence in our podcast for Billy's mental health.
Are we done?
I guess that was enough silence. So, here's a question. How much of that princess gem grinding did you do after you beat the game?
None. Because when I beat
Okay.
the game, I stopped playing.
Okay. Because you can, after you beat the game, you do get to re-enter and do stuff.
Yeah,
If
you
for some
actually
reason-
keep all of your gems on the second playthrough.
Okay, so was it a second playthrough when you got the princess gems?
No, my first playthrough, I got the princess gems. I did play the game a little bit on a second playthrough, and interestingly enough, it doesn't make that much of a difference having all this stuff because
The
when
percents are so low?
well, so yeah, it's all percentage based, not like a raw number. It's all percentage based of your base stats, so it scales like appropriately. You are a little bit better in the beginning, but it scales with you. So if you get like a 40% increase of your attack and your attack is 10, great, you go from 10 to 14. But if it's, if you're hitting for like 300, then you now attack for 420. So whatever. Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that check out?
Yeah.
Something like that.
They
Why
call
not?
me the math magician.
Do they?
Yeah.
We never have.
Yeah, you
Well,
people aren't
now-
you people aren't they.
Guess what someone's nickname is going to be for the next several podcasts?
Okay.
The math magician.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess speaking of stats and stacking stats, another interesting mechanic in this game is the Stardusts.
True.
There are permanent stat boosts that you can give to characters. And the reason why this is interesting is that one of your characters leaves midway through the game. One of your characters just up and leaves and betrays you, and that character is super obvious who it's going to be because they level at an accelerated rate for some reason that just I'm like, how come this person is leveling 2 to 3 times as
Just
fast
clearly
as everyone
way
else?
better than everyone else.
And I'm totally getting their tree is full and no one else is even close to full. This doesn't make sense.
Oh,
Something
mine were
bad's
full
about
before
to
I got
happen.
her. No, that's not true. Mine were as full as hers was. But then again, I was playing on expert mode.
You don't get more experience. It just takes longer. Everything just does less damage or
Expert
more
mode
damage.
is something you select before you turn on the game, Gino.
It's a state of mind, Gino.
It's a state of mind.
Okay.
You're right. I didn't get the princess gems. I'm a plebeian who doesn't have those princess gems.
You're also a robot right now because your mic just went super hella weird for a second.
I come from the future?
You're still in the future.
Great. So my mic's weird?
I think you're settling down now.
Is it better now?
Yeah, kinda.
Oh. Chopped and screwed?
It's okay.
that what's
We'll just
happening?
do all the talking. Yo, Pete, you had something about like building something. Go for it.
Yeah.
Building
something
dim
about
sum?
Buildings and Romans.
Yeah,
I
sure.
was gonna say I gave all my Stardust to Aurora because I can only trust main characters. They never abandon me.
Do you think?
I did too.
I was gonna say. I think betrayal is an overused video game mechanic as well. It seems to be like the go-to for when there needs to be a twist.
Yeah. Person who was in your party who's like, nah. That happens pretty frequently, especially in RPGs with large parties. But then again, betrayal is an overused mechanic in life.
That's
Yeah,
true.
right?
Yeah. So
Shit.
buildings Roman. Sorry.
All right, buildings Romans.
What
So
is this?
the buildings Roman is, well, technically Roman is the word for novel. So technically it's a term about a novel, but it's basically a coming of age story, right? We have this person, usually they're a child, and they grow up into whoever this hero may or may not be, right? And I want to posit that it is the standard or perhaps most used genre, especially in RPGs. And now I have a question to that. Is it because it fits so precisely into the idea of sort of gaining powers and becoming stronger or whatever? Or
Leveling
is
up.
it because or gamers potentially are an audience inherently attracted to the idea of a buildings roman?
Um, I have multi-part answer of
Right?
what I
Tell me,
think,
baby.
but why don't you go first, Billy? Because I've thought about this a whole heck of a lot.
Okay, well, I haven't thought about this at all, so I'm flying off the cuff immediately. Let's roll, baby. Uh, um, so my knee-jerk reaction is I'm gonna even take it a step further into that, you know, people that are attracted to these kind of games. Yeah, I can appreciate it as much of an adult as you can call me. You know, I am past the years of when I'm a kid and playing video games is just something that kids do. Right now, I'm an adult with a day job, and I also still play games because I enjoy that mode of entertainment so much. So I think that this building Roma is
Very good. Suitably
Now it's French.
building.
I don't fucking know, man.
I think it is French.
This
It's,
building
Okay.
Roman
I think it's
thing,
German, actually.
whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. It's building Roman,
It's German.
and I think it's also pointing towards this sort of inner youth of the game player. We are a little bit, children at heart because we're still playing video games, or a person who is, 8, 10, 12, 14 playing games, they are kids. So, in order to be playing a video game, which is basically a storybook you play with your hands.
Video games are basically storybooks you play with.
It's a children's toy. It is
Flawless
Back to the Future
analogy.
too. It's basically a children's toy.
So you have to be a little bit childish, and these coming of age stories might ring true with the inherent, not immaturity, but maybe their youngness
The
of heart
youth.
or nature. Yeah, their youngness of nature. I don't know how to
We made up a
say it.
word today. Great.
Not
I
Carl
don't.
Youngness, but like actual youth. Them
Speaking of
youths.
Carl Jung,
Good.
good, nice one. So I think that Buildings Roman fits in very well with the Hero with a Thousand. Is it the Hero with a Thousand Faces? The story about how the hero's journey is just used over and over and over and over again, and that story arc, that particular type of story arc, is repeated across a lot of epic poems and novels, and you can extend it into movies and to TV. And the idea of a person coming of age is central to that storyline, to that archetype, that story archetype.
Now I want to make a
And
video game where you just actually change main characters 45 times because it's the same actual story, but you start off as like a Knights Crusader, you end up being a ninja at some point, and then you're Spider-Man, and
play Final Fantasy V.
I won't.
It's kind of like that, but or Chrono Cross, but because that story is so intrinsically intertwined with the coming of age story, and because that is kind of one of the default story archetypes that a lot of games utilize, I think that the two just go hand in hand. It works perfectly. Like if you're going to use the Hero with a Thousand Faces as a template for your story, it makes sense to have a young character who is coming of age. Also, Japanese game design, a lot of Japanese RPGs seem to be focused on people in their late teens to early 20s coming of age. And a lot of Japanese anime that is also targeted at younger kids, there's kind of an assumed youth in the audience. And so a lot of times the parties are largely made up of people in that same age range. And so you get these kind of coming of age stories intrinsically roped in there as well.
Seems like
I
you
can't
have
think
like a
of
token old guy too.
yeah,
And
you'll
like
have
it's a
a
thing
dude.
that they're old. Like in Final Fantasy X, you had like Auron, who was like the token old guy.
Yeah, their character trait is old.
One arm guy.
Yeah,
Orin.
yeah.
Yeah. Like a lot of times in think like Final Fantasy, I don't know the Tales series. I think is also full of young,
Like Tales of
fair-faced people.
Symphonia.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
all the Tales games,
they always
Chrono
have real
Cross.
young kids. They'll usually have like an actual child or like actual children, like 8, 10-year-old kids among
Hmm.
their late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, but since so many of these stories focus on a late teens, early 20s sort of cast, and usually it is in favor of one of the characters being the person who is coming of age, usually the main character, I think it falls in line very well. And also, it fits in with a power fantasy, a
Right.
game that is about amassing power slowly and overcoming one's problems. So if you're going to have an escapist power fantasy, it makes sense to have this story of someone who starts out being powerless or being disenfranchised, slowly gaining power, and then overcoming some larger existential threat or obstacle.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense in terms of the power fantasy. It's just interesting. Like, you don't necessarily have to map that power fantasy onto an age progression, right? But in a lot of them, like if we look at Zelda as our example, or in this game, the increase in power is intimately linked to, at least by the look of it, an increase in age as well. It's a
Yeah,
literal coming of
In
age.
this game, Aurora actually does come of age.
Yeah, exactly.
She acquires the power of the sun and the moon, and she becomes literally like she gets older. She becomes like a woman.
so so when she acquires the power of the moon,
Don't
is
don't
that
do it.
is
Don't
that
do it.
why when is that why she jumps to being like a teenager young
Don't
woman? Is
don't
it a
make it a
menstrual thing?
menstrual. Don't. God damn
It
it,
is,
Gina.
right?
Don't
It seems like it. I mean,
She
call it.
acquires the power of the moon and then she all of a sudden jumps forward like 10 years of age.
Oh my god.
and then she's ready to become queen, you know?
When she acquires the power of the sun, she's ready to become queen. Look, it doesn't even what do you don't even do it like it's not there.
No, there's definitely a menstrual subtext here. I think we need to unpack it.
You
That's as
guys
much
can
as I can
unpack all you
unpack.
want. Put on the gloves. Unpack whatever you need,
Whoa, how deep
guys.
do you think we're unpacking this?
I don't know,
Ugh,
but I don't want to be
deep
involved.
listens. The deepest listens.
So
No,
deep.
we are not. We
No
are.
stone
This
unturned.
podcast.
You guys need to
This
get written
podcast is
consent first.
woefully inadequate at dealing with this. We are going to need to reshuffle some of our panelists if we are going to delve into this in a reasonable way.
We pointed it out. I think that's
Look,
enough.
we could
to
always
expect.
delve
Yes.
into it in an unreasonable way.
No,
Just tell people off
no,
the
we
bat.
can't. I refuse. I won't be a party to this. But at least we noticed it. At
Okay,
least
yeah,
we noticed that it
we
was there.
noticed it. There was some kind of
Credit where
girl
credit.
development thing here.
Yes, and
Unfortunately, we can't relate on like a first person level, so we probably won't be able to elucidate these things as well as we should.
So, Billy, does this tie in? So, Pete, did you have anything else with Building Romana that you wanted to discuss? Because I
Nothing.
think it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a really easy way to do it. And in games where you have a narrative progression, it makes sense to have time progress as well. Especially if you're going to tell a story that is large and world spanning, you kind of need time to play a part because you need time for these giant world changing events to occur.
Right. I mean, if we think of some other games that have time as part of its story, you have like Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, where big world events happen over a specific point in time, like you pulling out the sword, you become older, and then you jump ahead 7 years, right? Something like Massive Chalice has, it's kind of a time element to it, where your generations of families marry into other people, they have kids, and now your kids are fighting. There are games where time makes a difference besides just the amount of minutes you've clocked on your game, gameplay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think as an explanation, it makes perfect sense. The only thing maybe I'd be interested in, Gino, this is probably unfair to ask you, because it's like, here, unpack an entire culture for me.
Yeah.
Why do you think sort of anime and Japanese developed games seem particularly interested in sort of directing their work towards more youthful protagonists.
To my understanding, in terms of anime, it's because a lot of anime, especially shonen anime, is aimed at kids
Yeah,
specifically.
that one's
crazy. The fact where it is reaching an older audience in the U.S. is mostly due to Toonami and the fact that Toonami in the U.S. aired at night, and so the kids who saw it when it was airing in prime time, by the time it started airing at night and started showing stuff that was more mature, they were they were inundated with like Dragon Ball Z when they were little, and then by the time they wanted to were old enough to seek out anime instead of just seeing stuff on whatever is on Cartoon
It had to
Network.
be on like late night Adult Swim.
It was on late night Adult Swim.
Wasn't
and then
just like Aqua Teen. It also had like good shit.
That's how you end up with a bunch of 20-year-olds who are into anime, but like Full Metal Alchemist is their touchstone for the most part, and stuff like that. And so any splash onto older audiences is kind of a nice to have.
I remember when
the focus is always kids.
Yeah, I remember when like Cowboy Bebop and stuff was actually airing in the U.S. for the first time.
Trigun.
Yeah, that was dope.
Yeah, Trigun. Oh man, Trigun was good. Outlaw Star.
Yep, all good shows. But when I was in Japan, those shows, One Piece and Naruto, the ones that here in the U.S. sometimes would be on like late night, or maybe they'd be on in the afternoon. They were Saturday morning cartoons. Literally, they took the same spot that like
Tom and Jerry, Looney
Ninja
Tunes
Turtles and stuff like that.
Is that why Naruto's such a shitty ninja?
That's probably why he's such a shitty ninja. Also, he believes in himself a lot.
Believe it.
Oh, I fucking Also, I think in Japanese culture, it seems like there is a focus on youth. There's just a big fetishization of youth.
What better way to have a story start comical and get serious and have the main character actually being like youthful and stupid?
I mean, it's useful,
it's a
but
formula
it's also
for success, is what it is.
How can I even argue with that? I can't. Yeah, but I think that Japanese culture, there is a premium put on youth in general, and so there is a fascination there, I think. But I think number 1A with a bullet is because they think that kids are buying this.
Yeah,
or people who want to identify as kids.
Let's talk for a second about demographics. I'm pretty sure if you cut up the demographics of gamers, and I want to fact check this on myself, but there's 4 categories, right? I think it's people over 18, people under 18, and then male, female, right? So
those are pretty exhaustive categories, yeah.
Those are all the people on Earth, mostly.
You're right, but I'm talking about like the consumers, right?
Those are the consumer demographics that marketers care about.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that it's the average game player is 35 years old. 26%. Yeah, this is a 2014 stat that just
wild.
that I'm looking at. So it's.
Do you know whose stat that is? Is that the ESA's? Is that the ESA, Electronic Software Association? Something?
Yeah.
Who is it? It's the ESA?
Yeah, the ESA.
Okay.
2015, actually. So this is this year.
They're the people responsible for the ratings on your games and all that stuff. They are the gaming body.
We've got 155 million Americans playing. Average of 2 gamers in each game-playing household. 4 to 5 households have video games. So these are the stats, and I'm talking about the demographics right now. Right now, it's 56% male, 44% female, but we're talking about age, right? So we got 26% under 18, 30% 18 to 35.
Okay.
That leaves
so a little over half.
That's more than half are actually, this is throwing kind of a wrench in our system because these producers are thinking that their primary demographic is like 18 and under or like 25 and under. but really, like a fourth of the people that are playing video games are over 50 years old. 27% are over 50 years old.
I agree. I do think that we are seeing as gaming is growing up. Remember our relationships podcast?
Yeah, you
where
talked about the dad,
it was
dad
just
panel.
dads. It was 3 games about dads basically, and I think that as we are seeing the people making games growing up, and as this information is starting to proliferate, we are starting to see different styles of story being told as well. And I think you can also, it's easy to make a young person's story resonate with someone old. It's easier than it is to make an old person's story resonate with someone young.
Yeah, that's a real problem.
Up is really hard. Like the job that Up did, making people of all ages relate to the plight of a person in their 80s, like that's a feat that no one even attempts 9 times out of 10. And that's why that movie's so dang incredible. And so I think just from a safety perspective, like one, it's easier to tell a story about youth. It's easy to come up with reasons why someone would make a mistake if they're youthful. It's easy to come up with the challenges they might face. And also, I think that story is intrinsically relatable because we were all young. Whereas if you're not in your 80s, you're not going to be able to have that well of personal experience to draw upon.
We've all been old, Gino. We've been there.
I know there's this one time I was walking like on the street and someone was talking about texting their friend, and I'm like, what are you doing? You should be looking. There's traffic.
Hey, distracted
Young
walking
kids.
is a scourge. It's a scourge.
They actually have these things like on campuses now, like in their sidewalks that are like, hey, look up.
What is it? Does it knock the
No,
phone out of your hand?
No, like
It's just
it's
a
like
guy
it's
sitting on
like
the
writing on the ground that says, "Hey, look up. There could be traffic."
Hey, look of danger.
Do you guys see people riding those hoverboards around too, the little 2-wheeled things?
I saw the most depressing. You know what I felt? I felt like an old fucking man was when I was walking by a school where there was a track, like a running track, and there were some girls walking around the running track who were like in high school, and there was a boy on one of those things in a hoodie on the track on the little Segway thing, running around the track on the Segway.
I don't understand
Hoverboard.
how you don't feel like a huge tool every time you step on one of those.
He was running around the track, but not because he was on a Segway.
We're turning into
It's not a
Wally.
Segway, it's
This
a
is the end
hoverboard.
of Wally. This is how it starts.
Gotta call it a hoverboard.
He had his hands in his fucking pockets. He had jeans on.
Jeans, that son of a bitch. Jeans? No.
On the fucking track.
Back to game
Your
stats.
Converses.
One thing that's interesting is that, all right, so guess which population is bigger of gamers? Women
Okay.
gamers over the age of 18 or boy gamers under the age of 18?
Women over.
Yeah,
Not
more
close.
than double.
Yeah, I mean, these stats are readily available if people want to find them. A lot of the conventional wisdom has been disproven pretty regularly.
Gaming is not a boy's thing to do. It's not a young people's thing to do.
It's a human thing
It's a
to do.
human thing to do.
I love how our podcast just brings people together.
It does. And tears them apart. Fucking princess gems.
Don't you talk about my Princess Gems. Get the fuck out of here.
I was
Really?
I worked hard for that thing.
You know why Billy played the game again? It was just to see if they would have taken his gems away, and he would have lost his shit. I'm sure of it.
You.
No,
You took
because
my gems.
on New Game Plus, you get to start all over if they take them away. Then you get to just do it again. And better than the first time because you know where you're supposed to grind. Like there are
Moment of silence for Billy's sanity.
no second moment of silence. There's parts of the game where you can just like grind for the gems better. And I found them and I wish I knew where they were before so I could have spent the time there like evenly spread out throughout the game. You know, instead of playing 45 hours of Child of Light, I probably could have shaved it down to like only 35 hours.
I want to go on the record saying that Child of Light's average playtime is 10 hours.
Not if you want the princess gems, it is.
Not if you want 2 princess gems, it isn't.
I like I like to beat games hard.
You kick the shit out of
I like to
Child of
finish
Light.
a game and say there's basically nothing more I could have done in that game. I squeezed every last drop of gameplay experience out of it.
You salted the earth.
Billy beats it up when he grinds, man. Beats it up when he grinds.
So Billy, you wanted to discuss something about storytelling mechanics?
Well, I think we covered a lot of it when we were talking about this
Buildings Roman.
Buildings Roma, and I'm not going to go over, a whole lot over and over and over again, but I said a little bit about this.
We just had an entire discussion that proves that's the only thing you do, Billy, is just go over the same things over and over again.
Touche.
He's not wrong.
I talked about this in Volta story a little bit, but there's something that can be said for a game that puts art and music and dialogue and uses them to create this like synergy of storytelling, right? We've got excellent games on the top games of the year list that don't do these things properly because they're just, games that resell you your childhood again, or
which you will happily buy.
Yeah. Or they are part of a franchise that has already made its success, and so they're just putting out, N+1 of this version game.
I think Assassin's Creed is up to its ninth.
Something like that. Fallout
sequel.
4 is going to come out. That's going to be a huge hit game if it hasn't already released. Yeah, Halo 5, more of the same shit, right? I want there to be a little more emphasis on a game that can provide a story where the music matters, the art matters, the characters matter, their interactions matter, what you do as the player matters. There's actually parts in this game where your party members will leave until you finish a quest for them. I think almost every character has this, where they leave the party until you go to that space where they are and you help them with some mission that they're on.
They either leave or it's a way to get another character.
Right.
So,
for example,
ballet.
What?
The circus lady doesn't leave. You just find her brother.
Right. That is just like a through the entire game mission, but
Rubella. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What was the mouse guy's name?
Bump it. Mickey.
No, it was shit. Whatever. I'll just choose somebody else.
Danger?
As the example. Not Danger.
Mighty Mouse.
Mighty.
We'll just use
Jerry.
We'll just use Angus. Angus
Tom.
stays
Damn it.
in
No, Tom's the cat.
No, yeah, I think you're right. It would be
Jerry's
shit.
the mouse.
It is
you
Jerry.
fuckers. You shit stains. I gotta find their names so I can actually talk about them.
I've gone through all of the mouse names I know. Oh, it was he was like Robin Hood, so it was
Robert.
That's what it was.
So look, you've got Robert who stays in the stomach of the giant until he can open the treasure door. Angus stays with his other tribes people until you can sort of like save them or regain their honor or something. Finn does that in like right as you're going into the well. He'll leave the party until you go back into the well and stop the bad guy from scaring his village or whatever it is. There's a couple of points where characters leave. The whole reason I was talking about this before we got sidetracked on this dumb little Mickey Mouse topic was
Mickey Mouse isn't dumb. You take that back.
I observe
Disney will
Mickey Mouse
sue us.
as the
They will
king.
find us and they will
Alright.
sue us.
I refer to him as King Mickey, like any other God-fearing Kingdom Hearts player does.
Oh no.
He's the king. Okay?
Don't you bring up that game here.
Okay, so
Flashback.
look,
Do it.
what I was saying was the music is important. This is an emotionally moving piano score by like an award-winning composer. Excellent. Awesome. The art is fantastic. It looks like a watercolor like children's storybook. Sorry, not watercolor. I meant to say like a oil
It's
pastel or
watercolory.
something like that. Yeah, it's kind of watery, but it feels kind of like pastel-y too.
I have a question.
Answer.
Did you find Aurora's constantly flowing hair a little distracting at
No, I
any
thought it was
point?
cool. Her
I just
dress
felt
was
at a
also
certain point
constantly flowing.
it felt like her hair, like she was underwater, because her hair would always just shoot straight back, like she was just into a fan, like Beyonce doing a music video.
I did love the way after she'd leveled up and she'd lift the sword, but it was too heavy and then she'd fall over. I really liked
That was cute. Yeah, but like when her and her mom both of them had their hair blowing in the wind, but they were facing each other.
it. So they're blowing in different directions.
So I don't know how the wind is interacting with their hair, or it's just
Also,
coming down from above.
we
and
said we
back.
would get to the mom later. We might as well do it now. After I've talked about the story a little bit. So I liked the reason that like character interactions mattered, the art mattered, the music mattered, your points
was-
of dialogue mattered. There was a synergy, and we don't
Yep.
always see that in a game. And sometimes those games that don't do it end up being our AAA games of the year kind of stuff. But something like Child of Light, which I think provides like an orchestra of gameplay experience, doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Yeah, it's got a lot of. It's very cohesive. I don't think the sum of its parts are that like Child of Light. I think it's a good game. It's not a great game, but it is very cohesive, and it is very. When you're done with it, you feel satisfied.
True.
And you feel like there aren't a lot of notes that are playing out of tune. It's just that when you put it all together, it's like an okay song. But nothing's really bad. I think it's worth mentioning that Child of Light, as an UbiArt game, it is one of a couple of Ubisoft games that have been released recently that are smaller scale, almost indie-sized teams within the infrastructure of Ubisoft, this gigantic company. And so they've been given chances to kind of branch out and do things that indie developers do within this larger structure. So some of the examples are Grow Home, which is a weird platformer with a robot, and you're on like a giant beanstalk looking thing. It's a weird game. There is Child of Light. There's another game about World War I that is really cool.
Was it that one where you're like when you die, it tells like it matters, like it tells a story about you when you like when your character dies or something like that?
It was a game about
I'm
soldiers
thinking-
fighting in World War I.
Yeah.
Valiant Hearts, the Great War.
Yeah, that's it. Like if the character that you're playing dies, like it has a profound impact on what happens later in the game.
I don't know that you can die, but
I think
definitely.
you have to die, right?
I don't know. I didn't play
All right,
Valiant
yeah.
Hearts.
We
I
all
just know it's super
die.
pretty. That's true. Thank you, Pete.
Was Ori and the Blind Forest?
No, that was a Microsoft.
Microsoft, yeah.
Produced joint, but it's cool to see the leeway be given to teams to do stuff that is smaller scale without compromising the large scale products at these companies, because so often we hear the stories of dozens of developers being funneled into one giant project because that's the project that keeps the doors open, instead of taking the money that could have gone to a giant project and splitting it up amongst several smaller projects. And so I'm happy to see a game that is financed in that way be successful. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to see, like, could we do with one less Assassin's Creed game and then maybe like 7 to 8 more indie titles that those developers could have been making? I would like to see that.
I think Kickstarter in a lot of ways serves as the proof of concept here, right? They see it can be lucrative in this other avenue. Now the big developers can get involved more.
Yep. And when it comes to risk, like, do you want to put all of your risk into one bankable franchise that may or may not be bankable for the foreseen, how long can it be bankable, versus diversifying and saying, okay, we're going to give a tenth that money to a team of 10 people and then see what they can do. And if any of these hit, maybe we'll make our money back, instead of saying, okay, we're taking all of the risk and putting it onto one thing, and oh God, don't let anything happen.
That actually brings up a pretty sweet point, Gino. Like,
Keep playing the Call of Duty.
you could have a multi-million-dollar budget on one game, or you can split that up 8 ways and see if you produce 8 or even 6 really cool games. If 2 out of those 8 fail and they never really launch, that's the risk you take. But maybe 3 out of those 6 games make 10 times what their budget was.
Yeah, and that's basically how Double Fine has operated since they stopped being a AAA. Well, they have the capability of making AAA games, but they haven't tried to make games on that scale since Brutal Legend, because Brutal Legend and Psychonauts were such financial. It was just all the eggs in one basket, and they had a bunch of talented people who had designs of their own, and so after their bad experience with Brutal Legend, a bunch of games that have come out of there, like Massive Chalice, Broken Age, some other. They've released a lot of stuff. Stacking,
the Double Fine?
Costume Quest 2, Once Upon a Monster, Double Fine Happy Action Theater, which is the only good Kinect game that has ever existed. They've done a whole lot of weird, crazy stuff where they have empowered different members of their team to create something smaller, something hopefully sustainable. Trenched, aka Iron Brigade. That's another cool game. So I think that there's another studio. It's obviously much smaller scale than Ubisoft, but another studio that said we can make one big game and pin all of our hopes and dreams onto it, or we can make like 3 to 4 small projects at a time and just keep them churning so that we can all stay employed and, not have that gigantic risk. Yeah. It is a cool situation. It's a cool video game world we live in. I wish that there were still mid-tier games, but
Did Double Fine make Grim Fandango too?
yeah. Well, no. LucasArts did. However, the lead developer at Double Fine, Tim Schafer, was one of the lead developers of Grim Fandango. And so I think they did not buy back the rights to it, but when they re-released Grim Fandango recently, they were able to work with Sony and I think Disney, because Disney now owns all the LucasArts stuff.
Yeah.
To release Grim Fandango under the Double Fine banner.
Okay.
So yeah. They don't own it, but they own some part of it somehow. It's weird. Law.
Sure, fine, whatever. What's
Law is
left
weird.
on this Child of Light crazy train?
I'm done.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
I don't
about
have
Child
anything
of
else
Light.
right now.
Yeah, so
We could talk about Romana Clefs if we want to talk about that too.
I feel like we
No.
had a big heart-to-heart with our listeners about not getting off on bullshit tangents. So let's.
Honestly, I'm not even sure what a Romana Clef is. So if
Me
one of our
neither.
listeners has the answer,
Send in an email, guys. Tell us what a ramen cliff is, and we'll be all about
all
that
right.
shit.
I'll just a reminder, if you want to get in touch, thatpinguino@gmail.com, thatpinguino on Twitter, @thatpinguino on Twitter, or you can comment on our page on
iTunes.
deeplistens.libsyn.com. Also, rate and review on iTunes if you feel like it, or don't.
Not if you
Actually,
like it.
do.
You
No, do.
Do it.
yeah, feel
Do
like
it.
it. Feel like it.
Feel like it.
You
Come on.
you
It'll
ought
take 2
feel
seconds.
like
It'll
it.
feel great. I haven't been told that it's comparable to heroin, but I imagine it is.
When I think about doing heroin, that's like the feeling I have.
I instead just go rate and review iTunes, and it's basically the same thing.
Yes.
If you were neat,
Way less addictive and less life-destroying.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, the 5-star one. It's the one you want. And so, without further ado, Billy, I believe it is your turn to pick what we play next.
Oh,
we're
right.
just gonna review drop tables. No games, just
Drop charts. I'm gonna make a
Drop
video
charts.
game when they call like Drop Charts the game.
That sounds like a dubstep game.
Yeah, right.
Just
The deepest drops.
Drop charts.
All right, it's been a while.
Rubies, rubies, rubies.
It's been a while since we played sort of like a really sort of public, well-known franchise, or like sort of what we were just talking about. I guess like a AAA kind of game.
Kingdom
I'm gonna
Hearts.
throw out not Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories.
You monster. You
Hey,
lied
I
to
liked
me
it.
about what we're playing
I
next.
liked it. No, we're not. We're not playing that. I'm gonna throw out the new Tomb Raider reboot. Not super new. It came out like a year and a half ago. But the reboot of the story with the new, younger, sort of like not fully developed Lara Croft. I have now played that game. It looked really cool when it came out. I was super excited when it came out, but I never got around to playing it. Let's go ahead and hit it up now, and see what it plays like. See what it does for the franchise that we have basically grown up with. I mean, when we were young gamers, this franchise was starting. So
Yep. I didn't play much of it, but I do remember a cousin of mine running around shooting leopards. I think it was a leopard or a tiger in booty shorts.
yeah,
So
I've played not to completion, but I've played multiple Tomb Raider games. None of them were to completion, but so I know a little about how
that's
they
probably
like
an indictment
how they
considering
feel.
how much you play most games.
No, I mean like when I was playing these games, I was not a fully developed gamer like I am now.
Oh,
I
okay.
was still discovering myself as a completionist. The grind father was just a wee
Billy
grind
was
lad.
discovering himself while playing Tomb Raider. Just,
No. Oh shit. All right, well whatever. Walk into that one.
Word choice is important, kids. Sometimes words have more than one meaning.
Double entendre.
It's just entendre. There's no double there. Yeah, so thank you for listening, as always. There should actually be some weird other podcasts that are going to be showing up soon related to some stuff, a bet I made on giantbomb.com at some point. I don't know if it's going to be on this feed or how that's going to work, but there will be bonus podcasts at some point. There will be more information on Twitter for people who are watching. You guys don't know about this. This is something I'm doing.
I'm already surprised.
Great. Surprises. Live surprises. So, till next time, thank you for listening. Billy?
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Hope you enjoy the next one and you stick with us because we care and we're really doing this for you guys.
Pete?
Thanks, everybody. Always nice to have an eager set of ears to listen to our dulcet tones.
God damn.
Damn your dulcet tones. So, thank you once again for listening. And till next time, peace.